But the first set I went to for a pre-release was Innistrad. So I started it in high school, started playing through those sets, started collecting and playing around that time, and I just started accumulating cards at that time. And it was just, I kind of fell in love with that era of Magic, right? Standard at that time was blossoming into this beautiful thing. There's a lot of creativity that you had. And I just kind of went through and I went through my collection. I was like, I want to replicate this as much as I can. And originally, I had a different idea, but we can get into that later.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's actually really cool. So, like, number one, like the origin, like, a little bit of nostalgia of going back to like, hey, I love playing these cards. This brings back good. But I also like what you said of like, let's just start with the cards I have, my collection, right?
Hmm.
I think that's a good way to get into it because a lot of times when someone like you're exposed to a cube, you play a couple of cubes, and then you're like, oh, that's such a daunting experience to build my own cube. I always tell people just like start with whatever you got. Like you don't even necessarily have to like figure out all like the ratios of the lands and non-land
Hmm.
spells and the colors and everything. Just like drafting is self-correcting. So like just start with what you got. I love how now where I know your cube is now that started out with that. That's sweet. I love it.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So did you like you've gone through a lot of iterations with it too, from like that beginning phase of like getting it going with the cards that you have. How like do you have like what's the story on like where it began to where it went to where it is now?
So it began with it just being a block constructed cube. And this was the first time I really designed a cube. And it was a really rough iteration, really, really rough. It started with just a singleton pack of Innistrad. So I had one of every card.
Oh, that's
And
right.
then I went
Yeah, yeah.
through same thing, Dark Ascension and Avacyn
Mhm.
Restored.
I remember that.
Through
Yeah.
game Yeah, through a little bit of design trial and error, we kind of established that the difference between Innistrad, Dark Ascension, and Avacyn Restored is that Avacyn Restored was kind of the outlier, right? You're building up this massive werewolf zombie infestation, and then kind of all the evil and demons are taking over the land of Innistrad, and then all of a sudden, Avacyn and all the angels break out of the Hell Vault, and they just kind of get rid of everything that's in their sight.
Yeah.
And so when we did that, like I said, we had Innistrad first, then Dark Ascension, then Avacyn Restored. That gave a lot of problems with color fixing because
Mhm.
that only allowed for 5 lands. Everything else was just basics across the
Yeah.
board, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that does not work the way I wanted to. And at the same time, I was like, well, I really like to Return to Ravnica, so I'll do the same thing. So Innistrad, I had most of the stuff already done, and then I started building the Return to Ravnica, and then I was like, oh man, I kind of just want to blend these together. And then when I started blending it together, I was like, wait a second, I can take this even one step further and just replicate. I'm going to say replicate lightly because I've been thinking about this recently. It's just trying to get all the cards that I first started playing with in an environment where that's like the power level expectation.
Yeah.
And like I said, went from that to morphine 2 different blocks to, hey, maybe I'm just going to scrap this idea, go to like a 2013 holiday vintage cube style. Then I was like, no, 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 I don't want it vintage cube. I just want it to be its own identity and try to
Yeah.
replicate standard from like 2011 to like 2013, 2014.
Yeah. Which then that brings in some of the master sets, right?
Yeah, I brought in one.
Okay.
Because it was the first master set they did, which was Modern Masters 1, and then they have some other stuff later on. I think that came out like 2016, 2017. And then if I wanted to, I could, in theory, like throw in From the Vault. From the Vault was the
That's
specialty
right.
set. Then that would give us access to like Jace the Mind Sculptor and some other like random things. But I feel like the power outlier for those would just be way too high.
Oh, I
So
think
it's just
they'll trick all of us, right? Because right now in like the vintage cube, we're like, oh, Jason Mind Sculptor, he's not good. His days are
yeah.
over. And then you throw it in your cube, it's like the best card in there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just like I wanted to make sure everything was within the same time frame, so like everything was
Yeah.
relatively balanced.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, cool, cool. So as you're going through making these changes, and then now because we've drafted this cube quite a bit, it's super fun. Like, have there been any like tough cuts, tough decisions you had to make to take out?
Um, yes and no. I think one of the so Abe in our group really the first, like one of the first iterations of it, I took out like cards that never really saw the light of day that I wanted to maybe give them a chance, like Tyrant of Discord. I think that's a card. It's the Avacyn Restored Rare, Burn at the Stake, like
Hmm.
weird oddities that could be drafted, but you had to have all the pieces at the right time for it to
Oh,
happen.
okay. Right, right.
So he described it perfectly. He said that when you're drafting the cube before it changed, it you had your first 17, 18 picks pretty much easy-ish to find, but filling in the last few pieces of your deck was actually a challenge, and it added that extra layer of complexity to it. That was kind of the early stages on, and that is the only thing I kind of missed was having that piece of the identity. Because when you have it where it's more than just a you can run through and you have to go on autopilot,
Hmm.
that's gone. The autopilot is gone because like
Okay,
if you have a queue
nice.
that's established and it's like, oh yeah, it's tuned all the way. You already know the archetypes, and you just run it over and over and over and over again. You know what to draft, and you know what's gonna do well, what's not gonna do well. But like I said, that was probably the piece that I am missing.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I don't know what incarnations was that. So, but yeah. So that's the only thing I think I miss is just like make cutting the really bad cards for better cards.
Yeah, yeah, and like bring in the power band then too, because like
Yeah.
if you're like drafting it for the first time and you're like, oh, I remember standard this time, like you may be picking up some of the bad cards and giving some equity to
Yeah.
other people who know what's going on. So
Yeah.
with that said, though, because like humble brag for you here, I'm bragging for you, where this cube was one of the main cubes at CubeCon 2024. So congratulations on that, number one.
Thank you.
Again, keep that going. Right? But number two, like so you had like hardcore cube, like people who really know entrenched, enfranchised cube players drafting your
Mm.
cube. What was like the main takeaway you got from that experience, from their feedback?
So I think it was I got like mixed feedback. And I think it was because I didn't necessarily get the like the hardest of grinders for cube and like the most passionate cube, because when you start getting into quote unquote cube theory is what we're going to call it,
Yeah.
when people are really invested into this, they want to challenge themselves to the higher complexity, the desert cubes, the restricted cubes, things like that nature. So I kind of got people who were wanting more of the nostalgic feel of it, and I didn't get a lot of negative feedback.
Oh, okay.
I got a lot of positive feedback in terms of, oh man, this was so much fun to go back and see my favorite cards. You did such a like they just had fun with it. It was a very just fun environment, not necessarily like competitive vintage style high
Yeah.
level of complexity. It was pretty low to the ground. Everything was pretty, I guess, not like scripted per se, but more simple and less complicated. Then the only negative feedback I got was my land selection for my for the land box. But
For the basics of what?
yep, they didn't
Oh
like
my
them.
gosh, that's so funny.
That they're like, this was such a fun cube, but your basics suck, man. And I'm like, well, all right, that's fine.
That's so funny. Well, so it's interesting. I think all that positive feedback is a great thing, right? Like from like imagine, as the cube designer, you're a game designer, you want your players to experience your product and have fun with it. That's the whole point. We're playing a game. So I think that's awesome. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah,
That's great. That's great feedback.
yeah.
So
And
yeah, go ahead.
oh no, nothing.
Oh yeah.
Nothing.
So from like that fun aspect, do you have a memorable experience of like players coming out with an awesome situation, awesome game state from your cube that you're like that was awesome that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that you can do in this cube is that when you're down, you're not always out. And it's not necessarily a bomb heavy win scenario where it's, oh, you play your bomb, there's not a lot of interaction with it. Um, the one thing that I remember, because I drafted it for the last round at CubeCon, because I wanted to just play my own cube just to see if I can trophy it. I did
Yeah.
not trophy it, which is fine.
Classic. That
But
tends to happen more often than not, right?
I ended up running the losers bracket to the all the way through. But some cool things I've seen people do. I've seen people door to nothingness get like just game wins.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah, that's
right,
achievement
so
unlocked
like
there. Yeah.
yeah, you challenge people to do things that you don't normally see in a cube setting, or just a limited setting, or even a constructed setting. So we had Door to Nothingness as a win. We've also had Master of Cruelties to a gut shot, which I was like, that's so good. Like I just
Oh, it's so
just
good.
yeah, just like things of that. Like you just get to play slow. For me personally, something that I've done that I really enjoyed was I Falconwrath Maraudered, Phantasmal Image the Falconwrath, and
Okay.
then ended up just like going and beat down against this like white blue control player. I mean, he smoked me game one, and then I like smoked him game two, and then he just controlled me game three. But just like things like that, I'm like, oh, I get to do this again. Like playing a Falconwrath Marauders for five, and then the next turn you play a Phantasmal Image that dies to literally anything.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
it, it's just like that's the kind of magic I love. It's like super simple. There's not a whole paragraph of text, and if there is a
yeah,
paragraph, it's explaining one mechanic, not seven. So
yeah. Right.
so,
The
but
classic, like, that's too many words. I'm not reading that.
yeah,
But you
like
don't get that with
now
your
it
cube. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just like it just brings you back. I mean, I guess going back to it, there was one thing that some people didn't mention. They felt that playing Mana Dorks, there's a lot of ways to interact and get them off the board.
Oh, okay.
Um, so there's, I guess, too many for them, too many effects, which I counted, and I think there's only five. Bonfire of the Damned. Um, you have Killing Wave, Black Sun Zenith, Pyroclasm, and then the other one. It's the one from New Phyrexia that's like two damage to non-artifact creatures, I think.
Okay. Is that one? Is that white?
No, it's red.
Red. Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah, I don't
mean,
remember.
that's not too many, but that's good to know, though. Like, well, I mean, if you're more experienced with this cube, to
Yeah,
kind of watch out for that. But
yeah.
well, I mean, that's leading into my next question of kind of like the final question here of someone who's new to your cube. What would be one or two tips you would suggest for them to keep an eye on as they're playing, they're drafting, if they want to win?
Swords are really good.
Swords, yeah. All right, good.
But it just in general, I think what the cube kind of morphed into in its current iteration, it's not necessarily mimicking standard of that time. It's taking the best of standard and making its own identity with what you have. So things that were really, really strong back then, so Delver, like the Bantgeist decks, the blue-white Delver decks, just things of that nature, they're still good, but you have to do it. You have to add another layer to it. You have to make it a little bit more, uh, I guess, tuned in a sense, but tuned in a different direction. You still have a lot of overlap, and then Um, there's enough color disparity where you can go two colors or even three colors. Heck, you can even go five colors. Like I said, people
Oh,
have
yeah,
done door
yeah.
to
The
nothingness.
door
They've done
nothing
just
is
like
good.
crazy things. Um, but it's just kind of like a build your own. It's like kind of write your own storybook. Like you just can flip through different pages, do a lot of things, but just know that everything is still good enough. You just can kind of make it better by having certain things together.
Okay, cool, perfect. I love it. All right, great feedback, great information for your cube. I appreciate it. Glad you're part of the CQC Spring 2025, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, man.
Hey, no problem. Anytime.